At this point, you understand our basic dilemma, and you have some hints about what you'll need to do if you want to reduce your distress and become happier. We can distill it all down to one guiding principle. Stop avoiding our feelings. We must actually approach our feelings and be present with them. Every credible approach to psychotherapy and every major spiritual path says the same thing. To be successful at this, however, we'll need to have several different skills. There is one main skill for making happiness: presence. Also called consciousness or mindfulness, presence involves how you relate to yourself, to others, and to the world. It means that we're noticing whatever's going on inside for us from a place that's probably best described as calm compassion. It means that we're similarly present with others in their experience from that same place of calm compassion. While it's a simple principle, and wise people have been speaking about it for thousands of years, you now understand why it's so difficult for us to simply be present. We inevitably come up against distressing, intrusive feelings, and far from wanting to be present with them, our compelling urge is to get the heck away. Fortunately, there are lots of tools and skills we can use to overcome those difficulties, and I'll introduce them next. Through all of this, however, remember that your overarching goal, the foundation of your happiness, is simply presence. As I've been pointing at, the place we must begin in order to be present with distressing feelings is to realize that they're mainly intrusive. Much of psychotherapy aims to do this, to help you see that your fear is perhaps out of proportion to any actual danger, that you are perhaps not as bad or inadequate as you feel, or that the pain over what you have lost is perhaps blinding you to what you still have. It would be most fruitful, though also most difficult, to recognize that virtually all of our distressing feelings are intrusive. Pretty much whenever you are feeling upset, distressed, afraid, guilty, hurt, most of what you're feeling is intrusive. So we're best off assuming that our distress is mainly due to intrusive feelings and that the situation is not as serious as it feels. It's kind of like presuming innocence until our guilt is convincingly proven. Many wise teachers have tried to encourage their students to get this. And what an amazing relief to recognize that all of this distress, all of this tension is unnecessary. That now you can utterly relax, settle, soften, open. When they speak about your distress being an illusion, of heaven being here now, of waking up from a dream, they've been encouraging you to realize that your distress is a phantom. There is nothing I would wish more for you than to know this relief and joy. As good as this sounds, as I said earlier, we'll usually fight tooth and nail to defend the validity of our feelings, that we are right to be suffering as we are, that I should be feeling scared over what might happen to me, or that I have every right to feel deeply hurt over what he did. So, usually, we have to take a more piecemeal, step-by-step approach to looking at each feeling. We can, for example, take a logical, rational approach, such as reflecting on whether someone else in this situation would likely feel the same way. Or we can try to look objectively at the facts, such as surveying all of the horrible things you've done to see if your conclusion that you're a failure is really justified based on your actual transgressions. There are many different approaches that can be useful. We can start with one aspect of our distress, and then, one by one, come to realize that they don't actually hold up. The more light that we shine on these distressing feelings, the more clearly we come to see that they're just intrusive phantoms. Once we realize that our distressing feelings are perhaps merely intrusive phantoms, we can stop reacting to them and begin listening to them. This is the skill of being present with our feelings. It may seem like a simple suggestion until you realize that much of your effort has been aimed at actively avoiding these same feelings. To actually be present requires turning the whole ship around 180 degrees and now listening to the very things that we were trying to ignore. We must actively focus on what we're feeling in our bodies from a place of calm, compassionate curiosity. It involves getting to know each feeling so that it becomes something warranting our attention rather than our avoidance. Even once we've become fairly convinced that a feeling is merely intrusive, we still need to cultivate our capacity for presence with the feeling. We must not be dismissive towards our feelings or tell ourselves that we shouldn't be feeling it. We may realize that we're safe, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to listen to our fear. In my own listening, I have felt abject terror. I have felt condemned as being utterly bad, and I have felt pain so intense that it obliterated everything else. But I was able to feel each of these with a calmness or equanimity because I knew that the feelings were intrusive. In meeting your demons, these intrusive phantoms, you'll find that being present with your fear is helped by developing your courage. Being present with our shame is helped by developing self-compassion. And being present with our pain requires that we don't fight it, that we allow ourselves to grieve. To the extent that we're able to be calmly present with our feelings, we actually come to experience them positively, as being sweet. Imagine pain feeling sweet, shame feeling warm, anxiety feeling exciting. The next skill is replacing our mistreatment of ourselves with a wise, compassionate perspective. We'll need to pay attention in order to discover the habitual ways that we fan the flames of our intrusive feelings, telling ourselves things that aren't true, and to stop. But the stopping gets made easier if we actively replace this mistreatment with a wise, realistic, compassionate attitude towards ourselves. For example, I can tenderly acknowledge that I am indeed feeling scared, that this is uncomfortable, and to remind myself that I am in fact safe. Again, we tend to react to intrusive feelings by mistreating ourselves, by tormenting ourselves, in ways that just serve to fan the flames and leave us feeling even more distressed. To become happier, instead we have to respond to these intrusive feelings with wise, compassionate presence. This compassionate presence won't make the intrusive feelings stop, but we will feel dramatically less distressed than we do if we keep fanning the flames. Beyond that, if we keep responding to our intrusive feelings with this same wise, compassionate presence, then the intrusive feelings will indeed become less and less intense over time. For example, if I'm feeling guilty for having forgotten about a meeting with a coworker, wise, compassionate presence might involve me saying to myself, "Oh man, I screwed up, and I'm feeling so guilty, like I'm a pitiful loser. Ugh." Let's get realistic here, though. It was a minor screw-up, John wasn't too bent out of shape about it, and I'm usually reliable. I'm not bad for making a mistake. I'm going to apologize to him again, though, and make sure that I put all of my appointments into my calendar. If I consistently respond to my intrusive shame and guilt this way, over time it will become less and less intense. The next skill is to stop doing the things we do to avoid our feelings. Through a process of paying attention, we need to notice the myriad things that we do to avoid intrusive feelings, because this avoidance really doesn't serve us. From addictions to avoiding situations that we feel anxious in, from seeking status to avoiding vulnerability in relationships. If we want happiness, we have to stop indulging in these patterns of avoidance that offer us the minor relief at the cost of greater suffering. The point is simply to choose to do the things that actually make us happier overall. The temptation to avoid will remain seductive, so realizing the costs of our avoidance will be crucial. When we refrain from our patterns of avoidance, whether it's addictions or controlling others, we're inevitably going to be faced with the intrusive feelings intensifying. Our avoidance was keeping these feelings at bay, so of course they'll become stronger when we stop these behaviors. If we're able to be present with the feelings, then they will subside. But if not, then we'll be quite compelled to return to our ways of avoiding them. Finally, a common way that we avoid intrusive feelings is by conforming to what we imagine others would value, and by playing it safe. But you can't be happy if you're living someone else's life. Therefore, a final skill for becoming happier is to express who we are, what we like and don't like, what we want and don't want, what we believe and how we feel. This will feel frighteningly vulnerable for most of us. We must also move towards following our real desires, what we most deeply value, the path of our heart. It will feel very frightening to let go of illusions of security to embark on this path. I must caution that this is not a call to reckless impulsiveness or to in any way be insensitive to the feelings and desires of others. It is simply an invitation to be true to yourself. It's through feeling what we feel, expressing who we are, and following our real desires that we truly come alive.